All right, Claire, is it okay if I go ahead and kick us off officially?
Sure.
All right, cool. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I guess good afternoon for everyone if you are in the continental United States. If you're joining us from Hawaii or somewhere even farther west, good morning. Thanks for being here for today's Bloomerang webinar, How to Build and Sustain Your Major Gifts Pipeline. And my name is Stephen Shattuck, and I am the Chief Engagement Officer here at Bloomerang. And I'll be moderating today's discussion, as always. And just a couple of housekeeping items before we begin officially. Just want to let you all know that we are recording this presentation, and we'll be sending out the slides as well as the recording later on. If you haven't already gotten the slides, you'll get them again. Don't worry. Don't want you to leave early, but if you have to leave early, you'll be able to watch the recording and get caught up on all the great advice from Claire here that you're going to get. And as you're listening today, please feel free to use that chat box right there on your webinar screen. We're going to try to save some time at the end for Q&A, so don't be shy about sending in your questions and comments. We're going to try to get to as many of them as we can before around 4 o'clock Eastern. And you can also use Twitter to send in your questions and comments. I'll be keeping an eye on the Twitter feed there as well. And one last technical note, if you have any trouble hearing the audio, if you're listening specifically through your computer speakers, we find that the audio by phone is usually better than the computer audio. So if you have any trouble, don't give up completely. Dial in by phone if you can, if you don't mind doing that, if you don't mind the hassle. We find the audio quality there is usually much better than the computer quality. And if this is your first webinar with us, I just want to say an extra special welcome to you. Bloomerang does these webinars just about every Thursday. One of our favorite things we do here at Bloomerang, but if that's the only thing you know about us, one thing I do want you to know in addition is that we offer some really great donor management software. So if you are in the market for that or maybe just interested in learning more about us, check out our website. You can even download a quick video demo and see the software in action. Don't even have to talk to a salesperson. You don't want to. You want to do that anyway. So check it out. But wait until after the presentation, please, because this is going to be a great hour of content from one of my favorite people ever, Claire Axelrad. Hey, Claire, how's it going?
Hi. Happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. Happy New Year. You are getting our 2018 webinar series kicked off. Big treat to have Claire here. If you guys don't know Claire, you got to know her. You got to follow her blog. She's got some great educational resources, her blog, her newsletter, even some great trainings which she's going to tell you about. And before she even does that, you should sign up for them. You don't even need to hear from her what they are. I'll vouch for them. They're awesome. She's an expert. She's got over 30 years of experience working not only as a frontline development person, fundraiser, but also on the consultant side. She has raised millions of dollars in support from her clients and her own employers as well. Great blog, like I said. She has been the AFP Outstanding Fundraising Professional of the Year. She teaches the CFRE course. In addition to being a CFRE, I guess that's good that you have one to be able to teach that course. Regular conference presenter, webinar presenter. You've probably seen her name on the For Good nonprofit webinar series, maybe her articles on Nonprofit Pro magazine. One of my favorites. She's going to be a stalwart of the Bloomerang webinar series. It's a retreat. So Claire, I'm not going to take any more time away from you. Tell us all about building that major gift pipeline, my friend.
Okay. So thank you, Stephen. I really appreciate the introduction. Thank you so much to all of you for being here and taking time out of your day. I am going to cover a lot of ground today because this is a really big topic, and deservedly so, because it's going to yield you really big results. And I don't really think that there's anything more important than major individual gifts. If you want to build a sustainable source of funding that's going to enable you to survive and thrive today and tomorrow, whatever your size, whatever your cause, you really should be investing in major gift development. It's really a big deal. It should be your hunkiest, your most sturdily built program, because these gifts are really a momentous life and death consequential impact to your organization, because 80% of gifts come from individuals. And the 80-20 rule really applies, the Pareto rule. You are going to get 80 to 90 to 95% of your money from 20 to 10 to 5% of your donors. So why listen to me on this topic? So Stephen gave me a great introduction. What I want to add is that I have been doing this a while in your shoes. I was a full-time director of development and marketing for 5 different organizations with budgets ranging from $1 million to $40+ million. And I headed up annual campaigns, capital campaigns, and endowment campaigns. I've asked a lot of people for money. And today I really want to teach you what I've learned. And if you'll allow me, I would love to be your guide on a regular basis all year round. My motto is really, if I know it, I want you to know it. And the best way I've found to keep the knowledge flowing on an ongoing, affordable basis for small and medium-sized nonprofits is through my clarification school. It's my online school. It has a little bit of tuition like any other school, but not very much. And then I'm about to offer my most popular course, which is Winning Major Gift Fundraising Strategies. That has more of a tuition, but raise one major gift, you'll more than make it back. So I just wanted to mention that. And now I want to get on to today's meat and potatoes. But first I want to launch a poll, Stephen, if we could do that, just so you can tell me what your role is at your nonprofit. So just let me know if you're an executive director, a development or annual giving director, a major gift officer, a board member, or other. So Stephen, are those coming in?
Yeah, I'm seeing. Looks like most of the people are development or annual gift director. It's at 43%, 44% now, and then kind of evenly split amongst all the others. Board members is the lowest today.
Okay. Well, great. Sounds like most of you are expecting to be part of major gift development. If you're a board member or executive director, or even if you are a senior program director, I hope you'll all be part of major gift development, because you can't just put 1 or 2 folks in a corner and expect major gifts to just start to fall from the sky. So let's do a quick review on what we're going to cover today. I'm not going to read them to you because we're going to go over each one at a time. But these are the 10 steps that will really rev up what I call your major gift fundraising engine. And let's take a little bit of an overview first, the pipeline process. So this here is the most standard way of looking at the totality of the major gift fundraising process. And your success really depends upon 3 things: making a plan, tracking success metrics every step of the way, and then keeping folks moving along this pipeline. And the kicker is you really have to build the pipeline, and that begins with prospect identification. And then you have to fill the pipeline by qualifying viable prospects for cultivation. Then you want to have to pull people through the pipeline by cultivating them and ultimately soliciting them. And then once you reap the reward of the major gift, you want to maintain the pipeline through active stewardship. So you keep it really well-oiled. And it's not hard exactly, but it's work. So you have to commit to it with intention and with resources. So let's begin with the first step, which is building a major gift team to do the work. So it shouldn't be really any mystery why you need a strong major gift program. Again, they are the largest source of individual philanthropy by far. The interesting thing to me is that a Bank of America study of high net worth philanthropy shows that 2/3 of all household charities in the United States comes from just 3% of total U.S. households. My guess is that this is going to become an even more narrow slice because of the new tax law. And they define high net worth households as those with incomes of more than $200,000 or assets of more than $1 million. So we're dealing with this really narrow slice of folks who, if you do it right, have the potential to give you the lion's share of all of your philanthropy. So you really want to get everyone in your organization, staff, board, volunteers, donors, really pumped up about developing a robust major gift program, and especially need a lot of referrals from everybody who's close to you, staff and board and volunteers and donors. Everyone on your team has a role to play. And I really can't emphasize enough how much major gift is a team sport. And the key players really are your board members and other volunteers, and your fundraising staff, and some of the other staff that will also be involved. You really have to begin by assuring that you have people in these positions to do the work. So board members and other volunteers have to get in touch with their own passion. I'll talk about this more. They have to give. They have to be willing to act as an ambassador or an advocate or an asker, at least one of those three things. And then the staff members have to be people who enjoy talking with people, who are willing to get out of the office, who are self-motivated, optimistic, and inspired about your cause, who can be organized, and who like to ask. And really what I'm trying to say is that nothing's going to happen if you don't make it happen. And that's why I encourage you, if you do take my major gift course, to take it as a team. You can enroll up to 5 people, and I let you do that at no extra cost because it really works so much better if you're not in this alone. So if you are a sole practitioner, if you're the only development person in your organization, start thinking about who else in your organization you can enlist. Really want to enlist your executive director, and start thinking about some key board members that you can enlist, and maybe even some program people who are very inspiring, who would be great meeting with donors and talking about your mission. One word about the importance of getting out of the office. You've probably heard that the best practice for a full-time major gift officer is to have a portfolio of no more than 150 prospects. What this presumes is that on average, this person is making 12 to 15 face-to-face visits a month, 2 to 3 visits before an ask, 2 to 3 face-to-face solicitations a month. So if you're an ED who has 20% of time that you can devote to major gifts, that means you could handle 30 prospects. So you could figure out how much time, how many visits you really need to make and how much time that means you're going to have to be out of the office. But you're not going to get major gifts unless you are up close and personal with people. So the first place to start is you want team agreement on what a major gift is for you. And there's a number of ways to figure this out. There's no one definition of what constitutes a major gift. Every organization is different, and it tends to vary based on your size, your budget, and your organizational history. But a quick and dirty way that I learned from Jay Love, who's the founder of Bloomerang, is that you just divide your database into thirds, and you look at those who are giving you 0% of your budget, and you simply stop putting energy there. And just as an aside, I will always purge from my database anybody who's been on there as a prospect who hasn't given for 3 years. And anybody who's been a lapsed donor for 5 years or more, I will take them off and stop beating my head against the wall. Those who give you 10% of your budget, keep those people on your annual giving track. Have a communications plan for them, stick to it. And then those who give you 90% of your budget, focus the lion's share of your time there. Pretty simple. Most organizations, however, do pick an amount. And I cover more how to actually pick this amount in the major gift course that I offer. But at one organization, I just want to tell you how this can change for you over time. One organization where I worked, when I arrived there, our major gift amount was $250. And over time, it raised up to 1,000 and then 5,000, and by the time I left, it was 10,000. For many years, many organizations have used $1,000 as their benchmark. Many of you may consider a major gift $1,000. I find this kind of strange because it was true 36 years ago when I began in this profession, and it's still true today. And you'd really think there'd have been a tiny little bit of inflation since then. And the reason why this matters is because if your major donors are getting away with giving you $1,000 when they could be giving you or should be giving you 10,000 or even 100,000, and you are sort of praising them to high heaven for being a major donor with your organization, you're leaving money on the table. You're not raising as much as you could. You're not fulfilling your mission to the extent that you could. So you need to pick an amount, and then you need to find prospects at that level. Oops. Did I just go to a... I guess I've got another poll here. Tell me how you are finding prospects right now for major gifts. So are you getting them from referrals from other people? Are you doing online research? Are you finding them in your database among current donors, mid-level donors in your database, high-level donors to other nonprofits, or maybe high-level donors to political campaigns? So how's this going, Stephen?
Looks like a vast majority are from current donors. 62% is beating the others handily.
Well, that is really, really good, because the next thing I was going to say, and I find this happens a lot, is don't just pick prospects out of the sky. And, you know, I'm joking a bit, but I wonder, I mean, I heard these statements all the time. What, you know, how about the richest person in the community? You know, how about Bill Gates or whoever is the richest person in your community? He has lots of money. He should give here. Or how about getting a celebrity to be our spokesperson? That'll probably persuade others to give. Does anyone know anybody? Or, hey, you go to a pretty Tony private school. How about the parents in your kid's private school? That's probably a good list. You probably already recognize the problem. Every organization in town is saying the same things, and these folks are on everyone's list. Just because someone has the ability to make a major donor investment doesn't mean they have any linkage to you that makes them a likely prospect for you, or that you have any way to reach them and arrange a meeting with them. It doesn't mean they're interested in what you do, and it doesn't even mean they're philanthropic. Ability is not the same as inclination. Ability standing alone really means nothing. So brainstorming a list of wealthy people in your community is a worthless exercise standing alone. There are a lot better ways. And one of the best ways is to look for donors who are already giving at this level, and those you think might be inclined to give at this level. And it sounds like a lot of you are doing this, but you want to really look at this based on a combination of 3 factors. And you've probably heard of this, but it's linkage to your cause. They've given before, they've been a client or a patron, they know one of your board members. In other words, you can get to them. It's interest in your cause. And that doesn't mean that that's a family member was treated at your hospital. That doesn't mean they want to build you a new wing. Linkage alone without interest doesn't suffice. And then ability to give. And yes, though we hate to talk about that dirty money, it's really important that the prospect have the capacity to make a major gift if you're going to put them on a major gift cultivation track, because if you're not, you're really wasting your time. Here's the kicker. You really need to have prospects that have all 3 of these things. And the most important takeaway I can give you for right now is, rather than beginning with ability, which is where a lot of people start, begin with linkage and interest, because these are unique to you and to your cause. So in other words, there's no place like home And you want to look at these factors, people that you already have a foot in the door, but you buried them in your database. So you want to look at people who've given an amount that's at your major gift level, either cumulatively or a one-time gift. You want to look at how recent their gift is, because the closer in time it is to now, the more ripe they are for a cultivation and solicitation. You want to look at people who are frequent givers, who give more than one gift in the course of the year, because they tend to be more loyal. And you want to pull this data for the last 3 to 5 years, depending on the size of your organization and your giving history. And you want to begin with those with the single gift at this amount, and then the donors who cumulatively given at that major gift level for any of those years. And if you don't find enough folks, then you might have to go down to a somewhat lower level of cumulative giving. For most small to medium-sized organizations, this falls somewhere in the $100 to $999 range, but it could be the $1,000 to $9,999 range, or even higher. And then you kind of want to sort these people by amount and by recency, placing the highest and the most recent givers at the top, and then the loyal frequent givers. And then you want to evaluate past behavior, their affiliation with you, how they interact with you. Do they volunteer? Do they serve on a committee? Do they have a kid in your school? Do they attend your performances? All these affiliations will incline them towards making a more significant gift. And then you can also screen them for capacity. And there are paid tools that you can buy. You can bring together people in a screening and a rating meeting to talk about what people who know them know about them. And you try to figure out which of these people are worth further cultivation. Some of your $100 and $250 are going to stay there, but some of them should receive different treatment than your $25 donors. So you want to unbury these people from your database and start to take a closer look at them. Here's another little caveat about your portfolio size. I mentioned that 150 is the ceiling for a major gift officer who does absolutely nothing else. All they do is get out and meet with donors. They don't even prospect for new donors. If you are smaller, you're going to have less people in your portfolio. I also don't recommend assigning more than two to three people per board member at a time. And that's because I found that if I give people too many, it's overwhelming and they do nothing. So that's just a little tip. But really, like, I have light bulbs here because it's kind of like we have these great ideas of these people that we think are going to shine a real light on our mission. But it takes time to screw these bulbs in and get them to light up. And if you have too many at once, you're just going to end up with a pile of dim bulbs. I apologize in advance for any other metaphors like this that I use. I tend to be a little cheesy this way, but it really helps me to picture things and remember things. So the next step to assure you have a manageable portfolio is called qualification. And really, you want to make sure that the people that you put on your portfolio are going to be responsive to your cultivation. So what you don't want to do is just knight. I call this knighting versus inviting. You don't want to dub people as major donor prospects just because they gave you $1,000 or because they scored high on Wealth Engine or some other predictive modeling that you purchased. You don't want to just do that and add them to your portfolio, because here's some reasons this could be a bad idea. They might not be prospects for larger gifts. They might just be $1,000 donors who are going to give you $1,000 more or less forever as long as you treat them well. They might not respond to your attempts to build a deeper relationship with them. and at the Veritas Group, they have found that only about a third of your prospects will respond to cultivation. So that means if you're going to put 150 people on your list, you need 450 people to start out with. And, you know, most of you, I imagine, who are not major gift officers are going to have less people on your list, but really you need about 3 times to start out with who you're going to end up working with closely. And the other reason this might not be a good idea to just knight everybody is that you don't have the resources to cultivate them. So if you put them on your major gift pipeline and they were in your annual gift pipeline, happily giving you $1,000, at that point they were probably getting a lot of touches during the course of the year, maybe 12 to 22 touches over the course of the year. And now what happens is you've taken them out of that familiar, comfortable place. You've assigned them to somebody who puts them on the back burner. And they kind of forget about them while they're going after bigger fish. So they end up getting only 2 to 4 touches during the course of a year. So what you really want to do instead is invite people into your portfolio by going through some qualifying actions to see if they really want to develop a deeper relationship with you. In other words, you can't lead horses to water if they don't want to drink. So how do you find out who's thirsty? Here are the steps that I recommend to qualification. And the first is to simply send a letter or an email introducing yourself to your prospect. Thank them for their past support, tell them how important they are, and invite them to visit with you. Now, of course, you'd also love to tell them about their gift at work, and but don't say I'm calling to update you on your gift, because that's really about you. That's not really donor-centered. This visit should be about them. And so you want to be really as personal as possible. You want to tell them how important they are. You want to say something like, hello, this is Claire. I'm calling from this charity, and I just want to thank you so much for your generous past support. I'm writing to let you know I've been assigned to you as your contact person moving forward. This works really well if you're new in your job, to say that you just want to get to know people and say your support means so much to us. We want to make sure you always have a direct contact here if you ever have any questions or require any assistance. I'm your person. I'd love to meet you, get to know you better, and learn more about what draws you to our charity. Please feel free to email me or call me at my direct line. Let me know a convenient time. I really want to meet with you. If I don't hear back from you, I'll give you a call in a week. So you've kept the ball in your court if you don't hear back. And then you make a follow-up phone call. And if you reach them, you want to ask them some open-ended questions to find out what got them involved with you, what keeps them passionate, making it all about them. And your goal here is to get them to tell their story. Find out maybe what other organizations they support so you can kind of see where their passions lie, because they might support some other organizations that nicely dovetail with 1 or 2 of your programs that you would otherwise not have talked with them about. Ask them how they'd prefer to be communicated with so you know this moving forward. If you don't get them, leave a warm, a friendly message. Mention you'd love to find a time to set up a quick in-person meeting. Tell them they can call or email a good time to chat with you, and tell them that you will try again. And then you want to try again by phone a week later. You want to try again by phone a week after that. If you get no response to your call or your letter, it's time to send a survey. And you can send this survey by email, by snail mail, however you want to do it, depending upon the contact information you have and what you know about your donor's preferences. And you want to ask just a few questions about your donor's passions, about what they like about your organization, what programs they like most, and how they want to be communicated with. Basically all the things that you were going to talk about in the phone call. You don't want to ask too many questions or the response is going to be depressed. And you want to think from your donor's perspective, like what might they want you to know? Would they have fun answering these questions? And if you send it in the mail, make sure that you send a self-addressed stamped envelope to make it really easy for them to respond. If you get no response to the survey, send a handwritten note card. Mention you're sorry you've been unable to connect. Ask them to let you know their preferred method of communication. Give them lots of ways to contact you: email, phone number, mailing address, even social media accounts. Then if you don't hear back, send them an invitation to an upcoming event or a tour or some volunteer activity. Follow up with a call or an email to let them know the invitation was sent. Ask them to RSVP to you directly. And then finally, for the really top prospects on your list who've eluded you, try a final phone call. Then, after you've gone through all these qualifying steps and your prospect doesn't bite, call a spade a spade. This person does not want to be cultivated. They don't want to build a closer relationship with you. They just want to give and not be bothered. And that's their right, and you should respect it. So it doesn't mean that in the future they might not want to be cultivated, but right now it doesn't make sense to put them into your major gift cultivation pipeline. So the next step, once you've got your qualified folks, is prioritizing who you'll pay the most attention to. So you want to tier your qualified list. And again, the Pareto rule applies. You really want to enjoy your top 2 tiers of cupcakes. Your A and your B folks are the ones you're going to give 80% of your time from. Tier C, 20%. Tier D, no. I mean, if you eat those cupcakes on Tier D, you're going to make yourself sick. You're going to be overstuffed with people. You're just not going to have time to get there. So you want to keep your portfolio manageable. So as you begin to move people through cultivation moves, which we'll talk about in a second, you want to notice if they're actually not responding to you, in which case you will drop them off again and maybe move them into the annual giving manager's domain where they'll get mostly mailings, not as much face time. Or you might move them into a legacy giving track, because maybe they can't afford a $5,000 annual gift, but they could leave you a $50,000 bequest, or they might leave you their entire residence. So you don't want to completely rule out these folks who've demonstrated some interest, but you might want to put them in another tier of legacy prospects and create a separate cultivation pipeline for them. Okay, I want to look at this just a little bit more closely because it's such an important step to make sure you devote your limited resources to prospect cultivation that's headed towards a major gift ask. So again, 10 to 15% of your caseload will be your A list. And this is where your strategies will be most individually tailored, most up close and personal. And it just makes good economic sense to put your resources where the greatest promise lies. So if you did have a portfolio of 150 people, this would be 15 to 37 people. These would be the people that you would have the highest revenue goals for, maybe 6 to 7 figure gifts. They would be significant upgrades, or they would be people that were repeating at this level. And then 40 to 50% of your caseload falls slightly below on the B tier. And this would be like 60 to 75 people out of 150. You would target these people for major upgrades. And then there's the 50 to 65% of your caseload, which might be 75 to 98 of the 150 people that you'll target for smaller upgrades. So the point is that you want to target ask goal for each prospect, and then you want to build an individualized cultivation plan for each of them so that you're getting them ready to say yes when you ask. And this is what a lot of people call moves management. And I like to think of moves management as kind of a treasure map, which makes me come at it from a more thoughtful, donor-centered perspective. Everybody doesn't get the same move. I like to kind of bring some fun and adventure into it, thinking about how the donor is going to feel about each move. And I really think this makes a huge difference in how successful your moves management program will be, because it prevents you from kind of getting lost and sort of bogged down in the process where you're robotically checking things off a list. Okay, we invited this person to this event. We invited this person to this tour. You know, this person was at our gala, and you're not thinking about what that means to that particular individual. It kind of enforces you to infuse a lot of love that you aim straight at your individual donor into their individual journey towards a deeper commitment to you. So I want to look at this now again from the pipeline perspective, how this helps you pull your prospects through different parts of the pipeline. Each move is targeted to move those 10% of donors who give you 90% of your money, or the 80 who give you 20%, along a relationship continuum from wherever they are now, from awareness to interest to real involvement to investment. And when they are warmed up, when sufficient moves have been made, the culmination is your request for a gift or an increased gift. So I really think of moves management as trying to move your donor emotionally. So it's not just chess moves on a chessboard. You're really trying to, get them to feel more inspired, more passion. This is something that's meaningful to them in their lives. And then you manage and keep track of these moves. And by the way, if your database won't manage these moves, you can simply create an Excel spreadsheet with monthly actions. And if you're thinking about changing databases, I would highly recommend Bloomerang. They are super on this. It makes it a lot easier. So each move is designed, again, to create deeper engagement. And you want to outline a year's worth of moves for each donor. And you'll have a mix of what I call low, medium, and high touch moves, which I've got up here on the screen. You're going to get this afterwards so you can look at them more closely. But your job here really is creating a climate for your donor to fall in love with your cause. And you really have to be proactive in implementing these range of low, medium, and high touch moves. And the high touch are generally done by someone who the donor will consider to be a VIP. Usually that will be the executive director or a board president or another board member. Usually not the development staff person. But behind the scenes, while the VIP high-touch moves are being made, the director of development or major gift officer will be continuing the courtship with a series of more behind-the-scenes, thoughtfully planned touches, communications. And everything, again, is being done according to this personal plan. So what I want you to do when you go back to your office is brainstorm a list of moves that are specific to your organization, things that you know people would really appreciate, so that you can have this whole list of moves that once you get it together, you can draw from it to develop a tailored plan for each of the top prospects on your major donor prospect portfolio. And probably a lot of you already do this, but it looks something like this. And, here I'm showing January, a kind of high-touch move. Right after the end of the year gift, the ED calls to say thank you. And this causes the donor to feel like, whoa, I feel really good. I've gotten VIP treatment, and I really trust that they're going to, spend my gift wisely and well. And then February, it's more of a medium touch. It's an invitation to a house party where there'll be a group of people there, and this comes from the development director. And then March, we're back to another high touch where the ED or the president calls and says, hey, I'd love to have coffee with you and talk with you more about what you're up to, what we're up to, but really find out a little bit more about your philanthropy this year. And then April, we've got another low touch, just an invitation to the gala, but with a personal note from the development director. May, we're back to high touch, where you've maybe assigned somebody to personally greet this prospect at the gala, maybe sit with them, talk with them, write them a follow-up note afterwards. So you kind of get the idea of how you do this balance of high and low touches. And I want to point out August, scheduling an advice visit. You've probably heard that if you want advice, you ask for a gift. And if you want gifts, you ask for advice. It's one of the best touches that you can make is to ask somebody for advice. So, for example, if your goal is to maybe ask somebody for a gift to your teen service program, you might set up a visit with them where you want to ask them their advice on how to get our young people engaged. You don't have to do a high-touch move every month. An average of 5 to 10 medium and high-touch moves a year will generally do the trick. Some of these touches will be the same for all of your donors. Some of them will be much more individually set up. And they'll all be tweaked because a move only counts if it's executed according to a donor-centered plan that's personalized for that donor. In other words, a mass mailing of holiday cards is not moves management. But if you send a newsletter with an added personal note from you that says, I really thought you'd be interested in this article, that is a personalized move or a touch. But, excuse me, about 50% of your moves should be moves that require some serious attention on your part. You also want to build continuous learning into your cultivation because you don't want to think of cultivation as something that you do to donors, more as something you do with them. And this requires you to have a clue as to what they like to do. So you want to set up some systems that help you figure that out. And as much as you can embed a feedback loop into the moves that you do, then incorporate opportunities for donors to let you know more about their interests and passions, the better. So every time you think about a move, consider how you might solicit donor feedback with that move. So you invite them to a gala, they attend, you've assigned somebody to meet with them. Maybe afterwards that person says, oh, it was so great to get a chance to talk with you more at the gala. I'd love to get your feedback on what you thought. What was your favorite part about it? So you find out more about them that way. Obviously, when you have face-to-face encounters like that, it's easier because you just ask them. But you want to make sure that you have a system when you do ask them and get this information that you regularly write up your notes and input them into your database or your spreadsheet or your Word doc or whatever you're using to track your evolving relationship so that you can use this information later. Otherwise, donors get annoyed if they told you something and then no one seems to remember that they told you. If you're not meeting with them in person, consider asking them another way. And this is back to a survey. This is not a qualification survey at this point. It's more of a cultivation survey. You can ask them what's the best giving experience they ever had. What do they love about what you do? What do they think is the biggest problem facing our community and our world? What do they want to pass on to future generations? What are their deepest, most cherished values? It's really important to understand what makes your donor tick in order to cultivate and steward them effectively. And then you can also learn a lot through observation, what I call legal stalking. And here is a list of things that you can do, which you can look at later. I want to make sure we have time for questions. But you want to examine how they interact and behave in other ways with other organizations and with you. And this feedback not only contributes to your knowledge, But if you, for example, interact with the donor on social media, it contributes to their sense of being heard and being in a deepening relationship with you that goes beyond money. And then you really want to make sure you stay on track and do the work by having someone hold you accountable. And this is my absolute favorite Peter Drucker quote. The best plan is only good intentions unless it degenerates into work. You don't want to allow your moves to fall to the back burner. And if I were with you in person, I would ask you to raise your hand if you have the problem of having these things tend to get moved to the back burner. And I would wager most of you would raise your hands, because that's what I've found when I have been with people in person. So if you're the only development staff person, insist that your boss meet with you weekly to hold your feet to the fire. When I had major gift officers reporting to me, I asked them to all complete a monthly action detail report that actually spit out of the computer. What this did was they knew that they were going to have to give this to me every month. They knew I was going to share it with my boss every month. And it meant, oh, they better be staying on track and completing their moves or it really wouldn't look good. It also helped me to spot when moves were being made that weren't really useful moves, that weren't out of the office moves, that were just sending everybody a card or something like that. If you're a one-person shop, if you're an ED, get someone on your board to hold you accountable. And then the next thing to remember throughout this whole process is that you have to clarify and tailor your case for support. You really want to know all your programs and services so that when you find out that your prospect is really interested in something, a light bulb goes off in your head and you're like, oh, I could really talk to them about this. And I could tell them specifically what the need is in the community, how we specifically address it, and how they specifically can help. So you want to know what your programs cost, what their overhead is, what your program staff need to do their job effectively and meet all of the needs that are presenting themselves. Often donors will say, where is the need the greatest? Tell me how I can help. You don't want to lowball this. You want to put all of your costs in because otherwise you won't have enough to do the job. So fundamentally remember, this whole endeavor is not about how much your donor wants to give. It's about how much they want to accomplish, and that's how you want to talk to them. Major donors really do want to give specific amounts to specific projects to accomplish specific outcomes. All right, so now you've got these people, they're qualified, you're cultivating them, you're moving them through the pipeline, you know what you're going to ask them for. Now you have to start asking. So you need a strategy to determine when the time to ask is right. And I kind of adhere to the Goldilocks rule. Not too much, not too little. But you want to avoid what I call cultivation paralysis, where you just keep cultivating, and you never get to the ask. And at some point, this is really meaningless unless you bite the bullet and make the ask. And this is really important. You might think you're doing your donor a favor by not asking them, but this is actually disconcerting to your donors if you cultivate them endlessly and then don't get to the point. You're doing them a favor, really, by offering them an opportunity to do something that's going to bring a lot of meaning to their lives. Donors who want to be cultivated also want to give. And in my major gift course, I give you a system, a point system, that helps you figure out what just the right time is, but you don't need it. It's just you have to have some kind of way of figuring out how you are going to know, all right, it's time. So when you get to the ask, there's another rookie mistake I want you to not fall into. And that is thinking like, oh my gosh, I have to have the perfect words. What you really have to have is passion. And I will always tell board members or anybody who's afraid of asking that what you say is not as important as how you say it. All fundraising is about passion. You need to inspire your solicitors, your board members, yourself to connect with their passion. And when I do, people sometimes say, can you give us a board training session? I do inspiring philanthropy sessions. I try to show people that philanthropy can be just as addictive as chocolate. It gives people a similar dopamine rush. And that's why you want to take the time to help people who are going to be soliciting for you reconnect with their own values and passions. Ask them to tell you the story of how they got involved with you. Make giving this really cool opportunity by tapping into your board members' personal passions for what you do and then giving them a way to match their personal passions to the donor. It's very much like saying, like, I love this restaurant. It's such a great restaurant. I want to suggest to you that you go to this restaurant. If you love your philanthropy, then why not ask people to join you? Why are you keeping it to yourself? Why are you being stingy about it? Once people have connected to their passion, then you have to talk to them about enacting their passion, and that means making their own commitment. If you're going to preach religion, you've got to get religion. If leaders are not giving, why should anybody else? You want them to follow the leader. So then they give, they enact their passion, and then the next step just follows logically. Ask them to join, ask others to join them in their passion. You don't want to let anyone ask who hasn't made a passionate gift, and that includes staff. Once the donor has made the gift, the next step in the pipeline is stewardship, or what I call gratitude time. And you really want to adopt an attitude of gratitude, regardless of whether you're doing major gift or annual gift fundraising. If you're not making fundraising all about your donors' meaningful actions and impact, they're not going to stick around. And Adrienne Sargent, whose work is really incorporated into the Bloomerang website, found that if you can increase donor retention by 10%, it can double the lifetime value of your donor. Well, guess what? Research has also found that a 5-minute-a-day gratitude journal can increase your personal long-term well-being by 10%, which researchers have figured has about the same impact as doubling your personal income. So when I read these two things, I was like, okay, maybe if you kept a 5-minute-a-day donor gratitude journal where you just wrote down specifically why you were grateful to your particular donors, this could help you increase donor retention by 10% and help you double the lifetime value of your donor base. And I think that this holds true in spades for major donors because they're the ones that are the most loyal to you and who have the potential to double their gifts and, just make a huge impact on your organization. So I'll give you a personal example. I had a donor, Carl, whose wife passed away. So we had a memorial for her. She had been on our board, and she used to bring cookies to our board meetings all the time. So I asked him for some of her recipes, and I made a couple of her cookies, and we served them at the event. And, this was just like really meaningful to him, and it's just an example of something that's a personal thing tailored to one person. But I was so grateful to him and to his wife for all that they had made possible that I really wanted to do this. And I'm still friends with him. I just went to his New Year's celebration with his new wife, and he and his new wife continue to give to this organization. I was really grateful to Elsa, who was a Holocaust survivor, and she honored me with these emotional stories she told me about her escape and her survival. But she was also really afraid for anyone to know these stories. So she wanted to be anonymous. She didn't want to meet with anybody but me. So I always made myself personally available to her. I met with her privately. But all the while I was encouraging her to also let her sister know that she was doing this. And ultimately she did. And she's passed away, but her sister still continues to give. One final example. Gordon, he was a major donor to the music conservatory where I worked. I lived there too. But he had made major gifts. I found out that he did his own composing. So asked him, I had my boss who understood music, look at the composition, it was pretty good. So we asked him if he would like to have his composition performed by our student orchestra. And this was a very tailored kind of thing, a very wonderful way to show gratitude, a very wonderful way to steward and get someone to continue their giving, which of course happened. So I'm just giving you these as some examples for how you can channel gratitude very personally. Okay, so just a quick summary of how this goes. So you define your major gift amount, you find your current donors at that level, you add in lapsed donors at that level, maybe people in the past 3 to 5 years. You add mid-level donors who are close to that amount, who meet the other criteria that you've established, like longevity of giving or a pattern of increasing gift size or a gift above average for this group of donors, other types of close involvement with your organization. Then you add names that have been referred to you, especially those people who have linkage and interest. You conduct preliminary research on these people, which we didn't go into today. You do some rating and screening of these people to kind of hone your research. Then you hone your list, you tier it, you keep it manageable for you. Then you actively qualify people with some preliminary touches and moves. Once you have the qualified list, you tier the list into A, B, and C groups to determine the percentage of time you're going to allocate to each. And then you refine your list as you go along, dropping people off, adding people on, to keep it manageable and to assure you're working with the folks who will give you the biggest bang for your buck. And then once you have the qualified list, or if you are already sitting with a qualified list, then you move on to creating a list of moves, to building personal cultivation plans for everybody on your list with some feedback built in and some accountability built in. And then you develop a specific case for support that is tailored to that donor's passion and that donor's ability. And then you get religion, you enact your passion, and you start to psych people up, to invite others, to share and join with them in their passion. And if you really want to get to the point the prospect is ready to be asked, you should be prioritizing face-to-face encounters. You might want to set aside certain days on your calendar to make visits out of the office or to work from home and make calls to prospects. Again, if you stay in the office, it's too easy to get stuck behind your computer or pulled into internal meetings. So you really want to assess whether you need to assign more people to make visits if they aren't happening. It's not just a job for the development director and the major gift officer. Ideally, the ED should be spending 50% of their time on major gift fundraising. Your board president should be similarly involved. Then you don't want to leave the ask visit without asking. So you want to set some monthly goals for numbers of asks. You want to track those asks so that the number of asks and the frequency of asks is part of your planning conversation. And then you want to close and plan to follow up with these people. You want to monitor the number of gifts you've secured and the amount you've raised and how you're doing against your goals. And maybe you're going to need to adjust. You know, you want to look like, are we getting decreases in gifts? Are we getting stagnant major giving? You might need to do some troubleshooting. You might need to go back and ask people again. So finally, you get to practicing gratitude endlessly. You really thank, honor, repeat this process over and over again. And my final big tips to help you raise big money for your big mission are here on this list. Everyone has to get involved. You've got to get over thinking about major gift fundraising as painful. You don't want to talk about giving till it hurts. Giving should feel great. You want to think of it as this opportunity to meet wonderful people who share values you enact. So you want to meet with people. You want to listen to them. You want to invite them to get more involved. You want to get in front of them. And you want to take the time to learn about what they care about. And don't forget, you're offering people the opportunity to change the world. So you kind of want to put a mirror up to your donors and show them they can be a hero. But don't forget what you're offering is this opportunity to change the world. So thank you for being with me. I wanted to take time for a few questions. I know we're at the end of our hour, but I think we were scheduled for an hour and 15 minutes. So I know Stephen and I are willing to stay here for as long as you want to stay here to answer your questions. And I hope if you're not signed up for the Clarity Click It, Bloomerang is sponsoring it this year, so we're continuing to make it free for everyone. I hope that you will join Clarification School. I hope you'll take a look at the major gift courses. This is something that interests you. Every time you join me doing anything, I give you a free bonus. And what do you think? Should we take questions? Do we have some questions, Stephen?
Let's do it. I'm up for it if you are. In fact, I think if we're not careful, Claire, you and I could probably talk for about 5 hours on the phone. So we better set a deadline of 4:15 Eastern, because we both like to geek out about this stuff. But we do have some questions. I'm cool till 4:15 for anyone who wants to hang out and hopefully get their question answered or just listens for some more. So I'm just going down the list. Got a question here from Cam. Cam's got a board member who hosts a charity dinner for the organization, has done so for the last 2 years. This board member draws a specific set of her own industry connections to attend the dinner, the charity dinner. Cam's wondering, how do I navigate moving that set of donors to becoming donors to the organization that Cam can cultivate separate from the fundraising event? So moving these people kind of out of the event and into maybe the annual fund and then hopefully into the major gift pipeline. Any advice for Cam there with starting from those board member referrals at an event?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question, but what I would do is take the list of all of those people and begin to qualify that list further. So I would sit down with the board member who referred them and find out what she knows about them. You know, what is their capacity? How interested are they in what your organization does? And, you know, kind of maybe figure out like who on those people it makes sense to talk with further. Then maybe she would be willing to call them up and say, you know, what did you think about what you learned here? I know our executive director would love to meet with you and have coffee with you and just find out a little bit more about you. Would you be willing to do that? Again, you're trying to get through these qualifying moves to see if this person is interested in building a closer relationship with your organization. You're not ready to ask them yet, but you do have to do some things to figure out who does it make sense to get to know better. And, you know, hopefully your board member who invited them would be willing to give you some more information about what they think and what they're willing to do to help you along the way.
Love it. Claire, I don't know about you, but my webinar interface just crashed. Are you still seeing the slides and everything?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Darn, I got kicked out of it, so I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind reading the next question until I can get back in. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, I see one here that says, so are you really talking about designated restricted gifts versus operating annual support? And I would answer yes and no. I'm talking about major gifts for annual, and I'm also talking about major gifts for particular campaigns. What I am saying is usually if you ask for a specific amount for a specific project, you will get a larger gift because people are more passionate when they know specifically what the impact of their giving is going to be and it meshes with something they value than simply being asked to, will you give $10,000 this year to our operating fund? You know, because that makes it seem like, well, we just want more money out of you. But if you can really talk to them specifically about what interests them most about what you do, and then say, hey, you know, we're actually trying to expand that program this year. Maybe you would be interested in increasing your gift this year for this particular program, then that tends to meet with a larger degree of success. Can you see the questions yet?
I can. I'm back. So you handled that perfectly. Thanks for saving my bacon there. Let's see if we got a question here. We got one from Sheila that just came in. She was wondering, when you mentioned contacting the donor, letting them know that they're assigned to them, do board members do that? So would you suggest that a board member tell that donor that, hey, a staff person has just been assigned to you? How do you think that sort of handoff should take place with the board members?
I think you can do it with board members, and you don't necessarily have to use the word assigned. You know, you could say, hey, I'm Claire. I'm a board member with this organization, and I know that you've been a really loyal donor here, and I'd like to become your buddy this year. I'd like to meet with you and find out more about what's important. You know, I'm a board member here. I'm kind of on the inside, so it really helps me to get to know people in the community who support the cause and find out from you what you think is more important, what you think we're doing effectively, what you think we could do more effectively. It's kind of an advice thing. So how about we have coffee?
I like it. Kind of like sending out a lapsed donor survey, but not calling it a lapsed donor survey so they can see that. Don't have to use the word assign.
Right. It's all very, very donor-centered always.
Donor-centered. Donor-centered pretty much will save you in every instance. Here is one from Christina. Christina is at a small community college in a rural area. College has not done a good job of keeping track of their alumni, which I assume Christina would think is a nice major gift pipeline, probably a good idea. Now the college foundation has a new direction, and they're looking to cultivate those alumni. Unfortunately, most of those alumni are retiring, or they're moving away, or they're passing away, you know, due to their age. What advice would you have to Christina where maybe they're a little too late in that nice list, and that list is drying up a little bit? Anything you can any advice for Christina there?
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
well,
it's a fun one.
I still think you want to take a look at the people that you have, the alumni who haven't passed away, and contact them and say, you know, I can see that no one has reached out to you in a while. I am really sorry about that. I've been hired, and things are going to change moving forward. I really want to get to know you. I mean, I think that you can do that. People understand. People are very forgiving. People have been, you know, kind of wishing that their school would be more connected with them. So that is one place. And then in terms of building relationships with younger alumni or people who are about to be alumni, I mean, you just start with good practices right from the start. So, you know, I don't know who's on the list, but I would start by taking a list, you know, of the alumni within the, you know, past 5 years maybe, and then do sending the qualifying steps. Send out an email and say, hey, you know, I would really like to connect with you. I'm new here, but you know, I know you went to the school. I'd like to find out more about your experience, what you liked. You know, it's really about getting to know and showing these people that you value them as human beings. The more that you know about these people, though, if you can do a little online research first, to see if they have capacity that would qualify them to be in a major gift pipeline, the better, because otherwise you're going to be working night and day building relationships with people who are never going to be more than $50 donors.
Yep. Staying on kind of the higher ed and maybe education in general, I guess it would be higher ed, but would you say alumni are the best major gift prospects for a school, or are there any other sorts of types of constituents that you think maybe Christina and anyone listening who represents the school should be looking at?
Yeah, no, there are other constituents, especially people who are interested in funding some particular type of program that is near and dear to their heart. You know, certainly I know Stanford has a lot of donors who were not Stanford alumni because they want to build like the best Jewish studies program there. Or, you know, they think they want to build a really big genetics research lab there because these are areas of, you know, great interest to them, and they think that this place is the best place to do it. It's prestigious. And so whatever is the most prestigious university in town, people who live in town who have that kind of interest are going to care about being involved with. The same thing for hospitals. You don't need to have been a grateful patient to want to further medical research or comfortable, compassionate care at that institution.
Makes sense. Well, we're about out of time. I just want to leave maybe Claire, you the last 120 seconds and maybe give us some final thoughts and how people can reach out to you and get connected to you.
Okay. Well, I just want to leave you with a word of encouragement, which is that anyone can raise major gifts. And a combination of know-how and commitment is what's going to get you there. I really want you to remember the Pareto rule for 2018 and try to put 80 to 90% of your effort into those prospects and strategies that are going to give you 80 to 90% of your fundraising goal. And that means really building this major gift pipeline the way we talked about it today and taking the steps that you need to keep things sort of freely flowing through this pipeline. It's really easy to get distracted by things like special events or direct mail. And it's not like you shouldn't do those things, but special events cost you 50 cents on the dollar. Direct mail costs you $1, $1.25. You lose money with direct mail. So you've got to have something that's bringing in a lot of money that's going to get you towards your fundraising goal. And if I can help you, I want to help you. Let me know. Email me. I answer all emails personally. I'm sure if Stephen and Bloomerang can help you, they want to do that too. There is help out there. And thank you again for being here. And thank you again, Stephen, for sponsoring this.
Oh, I love it. Thanks for being here. You're doing us a favor. So great information, as always. You're going to be back this year a couple more times, so this isn't the last you'll hear from Claire at all. And definitely does not have to be the last you hear from her if you sign up for her awesome newsletter and the Clarification School. Really good, really worth the investment. Do it. You will not regret it. Follow her on Twitter if you don't do any of those things, although I hope you do. But thanks to all of you for hanging out with us yourself. I know it's a busy time of year. It's always busy, right? I say that after every webinar. It seems like it's always busy, but definitely appreciate you taking an hour out of your day to hang out with us. We've got some great webinars planned for 2018. I don't think we've ever planned as many in advance as we have now. If you check out that webinar page, you're going to see webinars well into next fall even. Lots of cool topics, great speakers just like Claire. 1 week from today, we're going to keep it rolling every Thursday. We've got a really interesting one with Ellen Howe and Ashley Holmes. Got CFRE and a in-house fundraising person. So getting kind of both sides of the consultant and the practitioner there. And we're going to talk about what happens when a development director exits the organization, what you need to do before hiring that replacement, if you even do hire that replacement. Really unique topic, definitely needed. It's going to be a good one. I peeked at the slides earlier this week. check it out, even if that does not relate to you right now. I'm guessing that will someday, so it's definitely worth the investment of time. Check it out. Lots of other webinars that you can register for as well if that one doesn't quite tickle your fancy. But we'll call it a day there. Look for an email from me with the slides and the recording. I'll send those out today. And hopefully we will see you again next Thursday. So have a good rest of your day. Have a safe weekend, especially with all that winter weather happening in certain parts of the country. Hopefully we'll see you again next week. So bye now.